I'm about to have tea and toast. This is tea and toast with Cute Little Crow, and this bread was given to me yesterday for Valentine's from somebody in my support network that had traveled a very long distance to get here and is struggling with a lot of very profound issues that I wish I could help with, but they're very stubborn. So in all of their struggles and stubbornness to deal with things in what I feel would be a more effective way, they still managed to buy me a loaf of fresh sourdough bread from one of my favorite bakeries. So I'm inviting you to join me for tea and sourdough with honey. And actually, the person who gave me this bread also is a bit of a filmmaker, but has not finished one film to date and inspired me with a lot of my own healing when it comes to our world and our human evolution. So, cheers to that. Wildflower Bakery. If you ever come here to Victoria, BC, you should check it out. I met some people there yesterday who were from Washington and they were trying to move here because of the situation in the States. And it's interesting how through my own little evolution here as Cute Little Crow, I've been kind of drawing new energies. I'm a very antisocial person and struggle a lot with mental health. Flat out going to be transparent about that. You probably already know that. But for some reason, I also have this side of me that's like a social butterfly, and I've built my own little mini global community that's I don't know, just very centered around unification and, a sense of belonging and gentleness and healing. Also, I just feel like my community is very aware of my struggles as a mom and with my history of past trauma and just my frustrations and my feelings, and that's something that I feel like I really wish every mom could have that, and maybe that's a gift to me from the universe to be able to still accomplish all of that, even when I feel like the crappiest I've ever felt, which happens often. My most important goal is for my kids not to end up that way, right? And, to always feel supported. So whatever I can do to better myself, however humbling that may be, it's been very humbling at times. I'll do it. Right? As long as it's not compromising safety, and as long as it's not putting me in a position where I can't get back to home. Because that happens to people, and I like to think that I'm a very strong and resilient person. But you never know. Yes? I just had to unzip a zipper. The thing about sourdough is it takes forever to chew. Maybe I should have brought cookies and tea so I could just dip them and they would just dissolve in my mouth. I just kind of wanted to be a little bit vulnerable and give you a sense of what it's like to be around me. I used to do this with my mom. We would chat and have tea. She lived with me for the last few years of her life, and it all happened so fast. And that's what I want to say today is this all happened so fast, we don't get a second chance. I would love to say, let's start over, like you do when you're in a relationship or even a marriage or a friendship or a job, right? We go into school and we learn how to try things and try again. And then we go out into the world and we try to find our place, right? And I don't have anything against people who just want to live their lives, drive whatever car they have, whether it's a Civic or a Maserati. You know, if they want to fly around the world 20 times in a year, I'm not against any of, you know, those lifestyles. And I'm also, you know, very happy with mine. And I'm happy to just live my life too and have my tea and watch movies, put my feet on the coffee table, get my laptop out, you know, explore. But there's just something about the way that the tension of the world has been building over the last couple decades, okay? Like, I came here in the 1980s to be here and share and learn, and by 4 or 5 years old, I don't remember when it was, I'm going to look it up right now, but I remember seeing Chernobyl on the TV. And I remember the Persian Gulf War when I was in school, and I remember Y2K and the Iraq War of the early 2000s and 9/11. And, you know, I was standing in the living room when 9/11 happened. I woke up as it was happening, and I was in Vernon, British Columbia, and the entire valley was thick with smoke. It was the most vivid experience in terms of, like, you know, destruction and shock. And then, you know, the last decade or so has just been this, like, crazy turmoil that feels like a repeat of, you know, history in France or somewhere. Like, I don't know what's going on. It's this, like, it's this evolution that has these contributing factors, like political turmoil over the centuries, right? And I don't really know where I'm really actually going with this. I was just feeling really inspired by Stephen Hawking. Okay, I've been studying a lot of different, like, psychologists' work lately, like including Steven Pinker, who writes a lot about linguistics, and I've been reading a book about, you know, synapses, like, written by this amazing author, Joseph Ledoux, I think it's pronounced. And also just really tuning into spiritual leaders, you know, spiritual leaders. Like, I used to love Nelson Mandela, and, you know, Dalai Lama was, like, really special to me with my firstborn daughter. He came on TV randomly, and I just, like, felt so blessed that it was this live, you know, talk, right, on the only channel that I had. So how could I have missed it? I was watching TV constantly in the freezing cold of winter in BC, in the interior, where I was snowed into my apartment and my tires probably wouldn't have gotten me out of my parking spot. And, you know, Tara Brach is amazing, and Teal Swan. And you put all of this stuff together, right? It's like a homemade soup, and you put it all together, and you're kind of like, why are we not doing this for the planet? You know, why is this not happening on a global community level? How did we become so divided, segregated in our global unity, you know, to be here on this planet as a species? Like, why do the birds still fly south and we don't know what we're doing from season to season? And I was also inspired by Stephen Hawking's lyrics in the song by Pink Floyd, Keep Talking, it's called. I've loved that song. I've loved Pink Floyd since I was little. And when I listen to that song, I feel, you know, my whole nervous system kind of just resets to the rhythm of what we're supposed to be like, right? We should be able to wake up in the morning and rise with the sun and do what we are meant to do, right? But instead, we are faced with 100 billion trillion challenges that are not even our own, you know, and they're there, right? And a person like me who wants to go into the world and help people or teach my children how to bridge this gap, right? Not just between the poor and the rich, like, that's a thing, but this gap between us and ourselves, us and our higher power, us and nature, our environment, right? There's these setbacks, right? How do I find a career in helping others and sharing, right? When you're not even allowed in a lot of ways. I'm not kidding. Like, I've been antisocial for so long, and that's why that song is so important to me, because it really speaks to how repressed we've become and how this silence has affected us emotionally, right? This like kind of suffocation of these deeper human emotions, right? That we need to speak, we need to talk, we need to have these things be heard. And I feel like the rhythm is a huge part of it, right? The heart. We're just constantly chasing money, constantly trying to solve problems, constantly trying to understand the next big thing that's happening. And we're so advanced in our brains now, and we've acclimatized, and our grasp on technology is so important for survival, and to be, it's this integration, but it's not natural, it's all very artificial. Like, artificial intelligence is like this big thing people are pioneering, and it all just happens so fast, right? And had we just been a little more patient and sure-footed and allowed the universe to shed its light and intelligence, maybe we would be more advanced in our own machines, our brains, and in our language, and in our thought processes, and in our problem-solving skills, and our technology and creation, and we wouldn't have all of these crazy problems that are like, either they're unsolvable and they just don't get dealt with, or they just get ignored, or they just get swept under the rug or the bus, or whatever you want to call it, and they pass, right? One topic rises and it dies, and then another one comes up. Or one topic rises and then another topic comes up and kind of masks it and overshadows it. And then, it's if you imagine it like a soup, would you eat it? Right? Like, is that what we're supposed to do with all of this, is just suck it up, right? And I don't want that. Like, when I was younger, I wanted to be a part of a movement of whatever word I can use to describe what I saw, but was like, people with auras, people with, real people like me, with gifts, with light, And like I was saying, I feel like our creative powers are muted a lot of the time. And so we don't get to express our full abilities and, feel the full compassion in our hearts. Because when we are silenced like that, and when we are pushed back and held back and, unnecessarily barriered, for lack of a better word, it tends to wind us up into this kind of stress, right? And we end up just not communicating things in a way that's rhythmic, right? Our language becomes less of a song, and, we're not part of the universe the way we want to be, right? So, it's important, yes, to go easy and be gentle and just be and all that, but at what point is that just, oh, thank you, I love cookies. What a blessing. And a nickel. I'm rich. At what point does that mean that we are just being like passive, or like just submissive, and just tolerating? Like, patience is lovely and beautiful, right? But at one point, is that just like us being subservient? And like, when is that recognized as mental slavery? And it's because of these separations, right? Like, we don't look at the world like the world anymore. We look at the world according to its leaders of these separate places that make it very difficult for us to wake up in the morning, and stretch and look at the sun and like feel the pulse of our blood and our hearts and be human, because we're waking up to these systems that, we've created beliefs, we've assumed them, we've allowed ourselves to be led and to be, I hate to say it, but like I feel brainwashed half the time. Like I just want to like cleanse myself, And I think that's a good idea. Better than, cutting parts of myself off because they no longer serve me, right? Or cutting the world off, right? Like cutting social media out or cutting, politics out of my life. Instead, I want to cleanse myself of what it does to me and then rise into more of who I am by doing that, right? Not living in fear and not feeling inferior to all these powers that be, right? I respect that the universe has authority, that the universe is not mine. I don't own my children. The land is not mine. And I respect that deeply, and I respect that there needs to be some sort of management of everything, right? Like there needs to be laws, there needs to be math that makes sense and physics, and we need to be grounded and functioning. But is it working? Is my relationship with that system, that part of the world, and the way that it's functioning as a global economy, a global system, a global, organization, right? Is it really unified? Is it really serving me? Am I really part of that? Is that really working for me? Am I in a healthy relationship with my world? And to be honest, I really feel like my world is not being handled well, for the most part. I feel like even the rainbows struggle to come through. Even the sun is confused, and even the moon is just off a little bit, and everything feels like it's inside my phone a lot of the time. And so, when it comes to any relationship, I feel like loving detachment is healthy. Taking time to meditate, taking time to get home and just be one with yourself and let go, let go of all these ideas, let go of all of these thoughts and fears, and mostly I want this because it was really hard to keep up as a kid. It was really hard to see my parents struggle and then go, what am I going to do? I'm not built for this, and this world isn't built for a sensitive creature like myself. And, I wanted to contribute. Of course, I want to be a part of the world. Of course, I want to help others and, bring light and love into this world. But it was really a struggle for me mentally, and I have a lot of responses and reactions, maybe not just because of my inner child going, what is this? Like, I won't really get into that right now, but a lot of trigger responses maybe also just due to my own spiritual beliefs, right? That I feel that I come from a lineage, that I feel that I come from many, many layers where there's consciousness that, it it's hiding way back there, and it's not able to function here, in this mess. It's a beautiful mess, though, and, I want to just repeat my interest in communication of emotions and just being human together. I know that a lot of the reasons that there are so many different forms of control, like politically, socially, medically, by other humans who feel they are fit to do those jobs and fill those roles, is because of human nature, right? And violence and a need to protect others and, leadership qualities and whatnot. But it's, again, something is shifting where we're realizing that maybe that's actually why these problems are occurring. Maybe the very, thing that is supposed to be solving these problems and making things better is the very thing that's actually causing them, right? And, I think about this kind of stuff all the time. And I know I'm not alone, even if there is just a small amount of people who really think that there's another kind of intervention out there that would help and be more effective. I still don't feel like I'm alone, I feel like I'm alone when I think about myself just trying to live my life and just do my thing. That's when I feel very lost and very homesick. But when I think of myself, hand in hand with those who want to bring this light and love into the world and have a vision and have a higher purpose, I don't feel alone. And so that, that's really important to me. My hip really hurts, so I'm going to adjust. Because it's important to me, because when I think of a lot of our more philosophical leaders and leaders who maybe don't make it to their full potential, like even Stephen Hawking, I feel like he was an incredible scientist with, really, can't believe I found this for my class. My other one got wrecked. With really incredible ideas around, things that he didn't get to explain because he ended up with a lot of different physical challenges, and that made it very difficult mentally, I'm sure. I think of like how even in his position, it was very hard, to communicate, right? Like, and it's just, when do we make time? When do we make time to actually sit down and talk about these things? Like, I have a hard time sitting down with my kids like I am right now and doing art, because I'm so tired of all of it. And I don't think there is magic medicine out there that can really take that away and make it not happen. I think what we need is more time for ourselves, more energy for ourselves, and to be free from a lot of these expectations from societies, so that, maybe for you, it's not about getting out of poverty and being able to, paint more and spend less time like driving to work and, doing the grind. Maybe for you, it's being able to use your wealth to better the world. And you don't have time to do that because the expectations are on you too. And that's the gap that I'm talking about, is it's not a gap of money. It's not a gap of, fairness. And, all of that is true. There's huge inequalities, but it's a gap in communication. It's a gap in us and them, right? Between us and them, and a gap between me and myself, me and I, you and yourself and your higher power. Not having the freedom to rule with love and rule with creativity or psychology or natural medicine, food, art, science. But this world has become so political and so economically driven that it's a force. It's a force now. It's a force that I feel I came into the world because I was curious about it. I was curious about why there was such a heaviness here. I was curious about why there was so much darkness and not physical, like absence of light, but the mood, the mood of this planet, the mood of this world. Ignoring it that's great. That's great. That's not going to do anything though. And those of us who feel that we are born, to contribute our little spark and create magic, or whatever you want to call it, we are frustrated. It's so good. A good sourdough is like just so good. I think, excuse me, big part of meditation for me that I started meditating very early and started doing past life regression and yoga before I was even a teenager. And it triggered a lot. It stirred a lot inside of me. Not just about this world, but about like everything. And, all of it, like the roots of war and the roots of family, conflict. And a big thing for me has been focusing and being able to stay focused on a moment, being able to focus on the good in that moment, right? That leads to the next moment, and find that same peace, find that same, peace as in peacefulness. And, not allow the chatter, not allow the confusion of the world and the state of the world and all the problems on, the side of the world that's struggling to stop me, right? To block my focus, to distract me, right? But to be able to hold space for it. And that's not a walk in the park. Meditation is a practice, and it takes years to really like let go of all of it, right? Let go of our desires, let go of the pressures, and it's so true that you can't serve both worlds, right? You can't serve the world of spirituality and light and love and healing, and then also contribute to, what's causing the pain and the suffering and, the damage, right? And that was really hard for me growing up as a teenager. Where am I going to go in my life if I don't want to become, them, right? If I just want to stay with us. So I guess intention is huge when it comes to that, and self-care, looking after self, and just really being one with self and staying true and authentic to who I am. and learning from others who do that. A big part of that for me was dream work. And as a teenager, like I said, it started coming up so strong, like lava, like it was there for thousands of years. And getting into spirituality and meditation, before there were phones and technology, and learning to network that way, which I guess, even though I'm antisocial, I still somehow managed to acclimatize to people and draw close to the kind of people that were also very enlightened, I guess. That was a gift. And my dream work was so important to me not to lose sight of. I didn't want to lose the memories of my dreams. And I think like my state as I became a teenager was one of shock, because I realized just how much of my consciousness I lost coming into this world. And, I really didn't want to forget. I didn't want to forget my dreams, my abilities, and many other things that are hard to put words to. But I ended up, out of that need for security, meeting people in the dream work world who helped me through that kind of spiritual coma and taught me how to travel from myself in this body back home, and how to travel, to realms and places where I could find support and find inspiration and power, and, increase my abilities that way, and heal from this shock, and heal from and breathe again as well. And so, without writing a whole book about that right now in this video, I'm just gonna lick some solidified melted butter. Dream work is a really excellent way to do that. So I highly recommend listening to the song Keep Talking by Pink Floyd with Stephen Hawking in it. I love it so much, and I love how it came up for me today. And I think it's just from watching so many videos, starting from like the earlier times of Steven Pinker's career, and like kind of different psychiatrists and viewpoints from my era as a child to today. It kind of anchored me, right? And all of those little moments of like looking for knowledge in places that, were there when I was growing up, to help me better understand my world, right? And then I just felt really anchored by all of that today. It became kind of like this field, of psychology around me, like underneath me, and all around was just this mystical kind of light, of knowledge. And I was tired. I was exhausted from all the work, like mentally, to be in this place that I felt safer knowing what I know now, and safer to communicate without feeling so angry, or without feeling like so pumped, or so offended. And then the song came into my head, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember a decade ago just really resonating with Stephen Hawking, and and I didn't even know that he was a part of the song until I was laying on my living room floor in the apartment I lived in back when I just had 2 kids, and we had a 2-bedroom apartment, and the living room was my bedroom. and I was listening to this song on the headphones when my kids were sleeping, and his voice sounded so familiar. And so because we had internet, I looked it up, and of course it was Stephen Hawking. And this whole thing went down at the time. Like, he was brilliant and, mastermind, and then he was gone. And, I don't know what my life would be like without his voice in that song, but his words are so profound. And the way they sound in the rhythm of that song for me is so important to my life, such a vital piece in my meditation and in my healing and in my just radical self-acceptance of myself and my acceptance of others, while still very much believing that, it doesn't have to be like this, right? So I highly recommend it for anyone who's, just wanting to kind of fly above all of this that's going on and just soar like a bird freely away from its clutches, you know what I mean? And be above it without, any ego or judgment. Oh my goodness. Sorry, my throat chakra is way out of control. And we're halfway through February or more. And, my heart is aching a little with everything going on. Nothing that sourdough bread and tea can't handle. My first world problems of like not having a very good phone, and like the last 5 years of struggling losing my mom and how that affected me financially due to the shock of that, and growing up in a time where, being a spiritual person was debilitating. That's all there, but it's not gonna affect my vibe. I'm gonna let the challenging stuff, the negative stuff be what it is, and I don't think any movie would be that interesting without, a little plot twist here and there, and a twist and a turn, and ups and downs, and drama, and, we let it unfold, and then we hopefully find a way, some of us, to channel what's going on and work our way through it, and others just are so good at just living their lives. And it's been an amazing 2026 so far. We've been doing a lot of art and just staying focused on family and what's really important. But I'm seeing some major stuff out there, and I don't want to get on YouTube and rant or, like talk about things in a way that isn't appropriate. But I want to acknowledge that it's there, and that I don't want it to just be another year where we all go in with hope and then we kind of like end it going, finally, like, thank God that's over. And if my voice right now is weak, it's because, I'm tired. I'm tired from all of it. And, I want to stay intact in my spiritual bubble, in my, realm of support spiritually. But it's hard because the kind of people that I rely on are sometimes not really tangible, they're not manifested into this world or materialized into this world yet or anymore. And that can be really, it can feel silly at times, even with dreams. It's like, I rely on my dreams for like my healing and health and well-being, and my higher powers. And at times it just feels kind of like, I've had people talk to me about this lately even. Go outside. Yeah, we'll go out there when I'm done my toast. Can I have the piece? Yeah, you can have that whole big one. It's really crunchy. Mm. There must have been like some moisture in the bread because there's like melted honey and butter. And there's like this little bit of like what looks and feels like water. But I had somebody lately even say about death that we just die. There's no memory, there's no heaven, right in front of my kids. And I was like, when I was young, I became so petrified by the church that I was going to lose my family any minute. And I know that like this belief that this person had wasn't religious and that it was just like, their belief, and I respect that. But I was like, you need to be careful what you say in front of my kids because they take things so literally, and repeat things like they're so smart, but so fragile and like so delicate, and in this age of innocence that they're in, it's like if you say something like, that they don't exist anymore forever and ever and ever, that's going to scare them, right? Their imagination is going to go wild. And yeah, so it's not silly to hold on to something that means something to you if you really believe, that you're going to see your wife again or your child again. Like, please don't let anyone mess with that. And if you believe that you have angels and higher powers and that they are working in their divination for you, then please hold on to that. That's a beautiful hope and a beautiful belief, and I would even go as far as saying religion because that's you. That's who you are and what you see and feel. And in this world, it can be so easy to shut ourselves down for what's going on out there, for something that's told to us from outside of ourselves. But yeah, I'm so tired, even though I slept, even though I'm being nourished and doing yoga and meditation and letting things be, like the song by the Beatles, Paul McCartney. And imagine all the people. When I'm singing and playing guitar and doing all these things, I'm still aware of what's going on, and it makes me tired. So if this resonates with you and if you feel like you need to share or say something, feel free. And I know it's not a message that is coming through with answers that are, groundbreaking in the world or, even on personal levels, like specific, but it's a message of loving the whole world and everyone in it, and just really appreciating and having gratitude for the opportunity to be here and to experience life, be a soul, a spirit, myself in this human experience. It's incredible. I'm so thankful. And every moment that I'm here is another moment that I'm just so in awe of all of it. All of us here in this very moment, right now, and in every moment are needed, and we are loved in this moment, and we are a masterpiece. even the people that we forget and move on from, even, the people lifetimes and lifetimes ago, and even the furthest moment from us right now in the future, and what that holds and who experiences that. We are one with that, and I find so much peace in knowing that it already exists. So I guess I found my answer in that very moment, alone. It doesn't change, though, the fact that when I wake up, I want to take the whole world and I just want to hug it. I just want to give it a hug, So anyone who needs a hug, I'm sending one out right now, and I love you so much. Thank you for being here.